What's up everybody, Moto here again. Today's install video is going to be the R&G fender eliminator. So in the package you'll get the actual fender eliminator, a new tail lamp. Now this is a universal lamp they include. It does come in a blister pack, but I've already opened it. So it is not pre-wired with the connectors necessary for Kawasaki. So you could hardwire it to your existing connectors, but they do supply some adaptive leads and all the necessary install hardware. So this comes in a smoked or clear version. I went with the smoked. You will have to use your factory or whatever pre-existing turn signals you have. It doesn't come with any. I'm going with these from Highsider. These are their Coneros. They're small billet. I believe they're made in Germany, but they are extremely bright. They indicate well. Should give it a very clean look. So tools needed for this install included number 4, 5, and 6 millimeter Allen keys, and number 6, 10, and 12 millimeter combination wrenches or sockets, some cable cutters, and a Phillips screwdriver. So using our number 6 Allen, we're going to remove the hold down screw for the factory seat. Now using the number 4 Allen, we're going to remove both bolts, securing this outer trim cover on both sides of the fender. Once the outer trim cover is removed, the next step is to take a 10 millimeter socket, removing these 2 bolts here, the black bolts. This will allow the remainder of the plastic trim to come loose. After the bolts are removed, pull out and push towards the center of the bike. There's a small retention tab behind this portion of the trim. So our final steps to removing this are a 10 millimeter bolt on either side, plastic rivet located on either side, right here. Just push the center in, it'll come right out. The bracket that secures the fender at the rear, that was located under the plastic trim. You have to remove a 12 millimeter bolt here and here. There's a plastic donut around this, rubber donut around this. You'll have to pull out as well to make it a little bit easier to wiggle off. If you noticed earlier, I did remove the number 6 Allen behind the seat securing it, but I left this one in place for the last thing I remove, just so nothing shifts on me while I'm taking everything else loose. Once all that is removed, you should be able to lift the fender straight off the bike. When you remove the fender, be mindful there are 2 plastic washers located where the number 6 Allen screws were. Make sure not to lose these. Our next step is to disconnect the factory wiring. There are 4 leads coming from the tail. So with these 2 connectors, here and here, I've already disconnected one. There's a tension tab located right here. It's easiest to slide a small flathead screwdriver through here and lift up on that tab. By pulling, it comes right out. This one here is just a catch right here under this tab. If you just push forward, it clicks right out. The last one is just what looks like 3 lead Molex. This should have a small retention tab located right here. You can press in and it will disconnect. Alright, next up. Apologies if I sound a little out of breath. One of my neighbors asked me if I could help him with her car. I didn't realize she lived on the 3rd floor and had a whole load of groceries. But you're going to remove these 2 bolts. That's your number 5 Allen. After that, there are 2 bolts on the bottom of the fender securing it as well. That'll be our next step. You look just under the bottom, our two 10mm bolts. Sorry, it's a little blurry, it's kind of an awkward angle. We need to remove those next. Okay, so if you're reusing the factory turn signals, now's the time to scavenge those. It's just a Phillips screw. Remove that, follow the wires, snip that zip tie, the wire pulls straight through. And if you can see them, I found a new friend. Okay, to remove the skirt, I've already removed one, but we're going to remove 3 number 6 Allen bolts. Just be mindful, these are in there incredibly tight, so be prepared for that. Okay, so now it's time to start preparing the fender eliminator for install on the bike. Our first step is to remove the supplied nuts and washers from these threads on the back of the tail lamp. They've included a small piece of plastic trim, I guess, to dress up this lamp. You're going to feed the wiring through this hole in the back. Apologize, I don't have a wider angle. Just like so. Yeah, that does look a lot cleaner. We're then going to feed this wiring through the hole in the bracket. Then line up the threads, push it through, bump your camera, and then just secure with the supplied washers and nuts on the back side. Okay, so I may have failed to mention in the last step, the nuts on the back of the tail lamp are 6mm. So now we're going to install our turn signals. I'm using, as I mentioned earlier, these Highsider Coneros. You could use virtually any aftermarket turn signal as far as I'm aware of. If you decide to use the factory ones, all you have to do to prepare, and I'll show you in the illustration, the instructions here, you have to remove that rubber boot from the base, and then that's going to bolt directly on. So they did provide, along with the hole where you're going to feed the wiring through, there is a threaded hole right here for that screw that mounts to the factory turn signal base. Alright, so in preparing a aftermarket turn signal, it's going to be a little bit different for each one, but same basic rules apply. If there's already a nut on it, remove the nut and washer. Then you have to feed those over the wiring and feed the wiring through this hole here, which will be the same for your factory. Push that through. Push the threaded portion through here. And then take your washer and nut, feed them back over the wire, and secure the turn signals. Okay, so they did provide some sleeving and zip ties in the package. And if you look here and here, there are 2 holes. Those are meant for your wires to be zip tied to. Keep everything clean and tidy back here. You could replace this with some heat shrink, just so it stays in place a little bit better. Or if you want to use this and whatever tubing or sleeving came on your turn signals, you could take some basic electrical tape, and we're just going to wrap some, follow the zip tie, right here at the base of the wires. Just a couple of wraps. So this stuff tends to pull away from the wiring, especially as you zip tie it or you get any kind of tension on it. So if it does, this will at least still be black. Alright, so next step, we're going to install the fender eliminator to the bike using these factory number 5 Allen headed bolts, and a third, which they provided, number 5 Allen bolt. Our next step is going to be wiring. So with the wiring, they included a couple of adapters with these female bullet ends for your turn signals, and these work just fine. If you're using the factory signals, you obviously won't have to use these. They also included an adapter to the main harness for the brake light. I tested it and it did not work for some reason. So what I did was cut the factory wiring away from the factory fender and reuse that. So fairly simple. I'm going to tidy up some of this wiring, so don't worry. So if you look, they've given plenty of options, including some bullet connectors and some splices to connect the wiring. I chose to go with some butt splices I had lying around. I think it's a stronger connection. And I'm also going to slip some heat shrink over the top of these, but electrical tape will work as well. So when wiring the tail light, if you're wiring to the factory factory wiring, red goes to yellow, blue goes to red, and the black and yellow stripe goes to black. So we'll test to make sure everything works. Just flip the key. Alright, so the running light's working. The tag light's working, which is in the base of the tail lamp. Let's check the turn signals. Alright, right side's working, left side's working. Check, make sure the hazards work. Fantastic. And the last thing, we're going to make sure that the brake light works as well. It's going to be kind of awkward on the camera. There we go. That's working. So I'm going to clean up this wiring, put everything back together, and we'll take a look at it with the bike complete. Alright, so I brought it out in the sun. I got all the wires shortened, cleaned up, and heat shrinked. Put everything back together, leveled out the turn signals. So, much cleaner look than the factory fender. I cannot recommend these Conero, Highsider Conero turn signals enough. These things are made extremely well, and they complement this R&G tail tidy a ton. Much more modern, has that kind of Eurobike flair to it. These are a solid billet and wickedly bright. They'll get people's attention. The tail lamp's pretty bright as well. I don't know that it's much brighter than the factory one, but it certainly looks better. But it definitely gives the bike a much cleaner look. So if you want a more in-depth review of these Highsider turn signals, I'm actually going to be doing a video installing the fronts, where I'll talk about those a little bit more. But the R&G fender eliminator seems to be a pretty quality piece. Very simple install. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, comment below. Thanks.